What's happening at Ferrari? Why is the most traditional team on the grid redesigning its internal systems to adapt to a single driver? The adaptations Ferrari has made for Lewis Hamilton are not only profound, they are almost revolutionary within the Maranello technical ecosystem. We're going to break down everything, from the changes to the steering wheel software to what this reveals about the team's internal strategy. Dangerous. Stay until the end because we're going to see how this could be key to the immediate future of the championship and what signals it leaves for the Japanese Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton's arrival at Ferrari not only represents a historic signing on a media level. It is, above all, a technical turning point within the Maranello structure. And where this becomes most evident is in the most intimate, most personal, and at the same time most strategic element for any Formula One driver: the steering wheel. Up until this point, Ferrari had followed a very unique philosophy regarding the design of its interfaces and control systems. But Hamilton's presence has changed that completely. We're not talking about simple ergonomic adjustments. What Ferrari has done with the steering wheel of Hamilton's SF25 is a complete re-engineering of the system to recreate the ecosystem the Briton managed during his glorious days at Mercedes. What does this mean in practice? Hamilton has received a completely different interface than the one used by Charles Leclerc, his teammate, breaking with the tradition of technical standardization within the team. One of the most striking transformations is the on-screen information display. Hamilton's steering wheel now shows specific indicators such as SOC, state of charge, i.e. the battery charge level, with a detailed range from 1 to 12, and ENG, which indicates the active engine map. At Ferrari, these systems were traditionally separate and organized using individual selectors. But Hamilton wanted to replicate the Mercedes system, where everything was integrated into a single, centralized, and more accessible interface. This allows you to instantly monitor critical variables for your race strategy without having to navigate through multiple menus or button combinations. It's a radical change because, in addition to making it easier to adapt to the car, it completely alters the logic with which the power unit is managed during a race. In addition to the gauges, there has also been a physical reorganization of the controls. Historically, Ferrari drivers kept the hybrid management selectors at the top of the steering wheel. Hamilton, on the other hand, requested that those controls be moved to the bottom, just as he had during his years with Mercedes. This has a very specific reason: to maximize muscle memory. That is, his body already instinctively knows where each control is, how to turn each selector, and how to respond quickly in moments of high pressure. He doesn't have to relearn from scratch. He's driving a Ferrari, but it feels like a Mercedes. And that's no small feat. And there's more. All the settings related to the differential and brakes have also been replicated on the top of the steering wheel, just as they were configured at Mercedes. This gives the British driver a sense of total familiarity, even in situations where stress and pressure are at their highest, such as a restart after a safety car or a wheel-to-wheel battle on the final lap. It's in these moments that the body reacts instinctively, and Hamilton wants that instinct to never have to adapt to anything new. This level of customization is extremely unusual in today's Formula One. Not only because of the technical complexity involved, but because of what it symbolically represents. Ferrari, a team known for its structural rigidity and technical pride, is literally redesigning one of the most critical components of its car for a driver. This marks a turning point, not only in the team-driver relationship, but in the way Ferrari is willing to operate in its new era with Hamilton at the helm. The message is clear: they're betting everything on him. They're willing to break with tradition, with their own technical customs, with their internal processes, if it means giving Hamilton the tools to win. But with every customization comes a risk, and it remains to be seen whether this aggressive investment in adaptation will bear the expected fruits. Because when the pillars of a team like Ferrari's technical DNA are modified, there's no turning back. Ferrari's decision to thoroughly adapt the SF25 to Lewis Hamilton's personal preferences isn't just a technical decision, it's a statement of principle. We're talking about a team with decades of history, with a deeply rooted culture, that has decided to flex its structures around a single driver. And while this may seem like a logical move considering we're talking about a 7-time world champion, the truth is that this strategy represents a paradigm shift with consequences that could impact far beyond immediate on-track performance. Let's start with the benefits, which are obvious and, at the same time, strategically powerful. Hamilton has spent more than a decade working with a completely different car philosophy at Mercedes, and his talent has been molded around specific systems, interfaces, and configurations he knows inside out. Adapting the Ferrari to that same style allows him to minimize his learning curve. He doesn't need months to feel comfortable in the car. He He doesn't need to translate every technical instruction into a new language. He's being spoken to in the language he's mastered, in the system he's perfected race after race. This familiarity is no small luxury. On a grid where the gap between third and sixth place can be decided by tenths of a second, allowing Hamilton to operate at 100% capacity from the start can make a substantial difference. Even more so in a context like 2025, where margins are tighter than ever, where McLaren has made an impressive leap in performance, and where Mercedes is making a strong comeback. Ferrari can't afford a slow adaptation. It needs results now. And in that sense, this strategy is a short-term investment, but with a long-term projection. However, the other side of the coin cannot be ignored. Because adapting a car profoundly for a driver also entails a series of operational, technical, and, above all, cultural challenges. The first of these is the fragmentation of development. Ferrari now operates with two technical philosophies within the same team. One that responds to the traditional logic embodied by Charles Leclerc, and another completely redesigned for Hamilton. This means that every advance, every improvement, must be considered in two ways. What works for one may not be optimal for another. The risk of duplicating efforts increases. Furthermore, there's a question of internal balance. Leclerc has been the face of Ferrari for years. The pampered driver, the symbol of his future project. What happens when he sees that the car on the other side of the garage has tools he doesn't? How does that affect internal morale? The collaboration between engineers on both sides of the pit? Developing a car in Formula One is an extreme team effort. And if interests diverge, the cohesion of the entire project can begin to crack. There's also the technical cost to consider. Implementing these adaptations isn't simply reprogramming a screen. Many of the modifications require deep adjustments to the car's systems, from electronic integration to compatibility with the power unit. And all of this consumes resources, simulation time, hours in the wind tunnel, and the dedication of engineers who could be working on aerodynamic or mechanical improvements. Ferrari is betting on human advantage over technical advantage in this case, and that doesn't always guarantee results. Especially if the base car continues to suffer from the structural problems it has shown in the first races of the season. But perhaps the greatest risk of all is dependence. If the entire Ferrari 2025 project ends up revolving around a single driver, the team becomes vulnerable. Any drop in performance, any eventuality with Hamilton, from a retirement to a drop in form, could leave Ferrari without a plan B. And in a season where consistency is more valuable than ever, that dependence could be costly. In short, Ferrari has decided to redesign its car for a champion. It does so in the hope of accelerating adaptation, of leveraging the experience and talent of a driver who has defined an era. But in the process, it is taking structural, cultural, and operational risks that could redefine its immediate future. Will this be the masterstroke that returns Maranello to the top, or a gamble that exposes more cracks than it manages to cover? The next races will have the answer. Lewis Hamilton's statements after qualifying in Australia were the most transparent reflection of how complex this adaptation process with Ferrari has been. In his own words, he confessed that it doesn't feel natural, that it has been challenging, and that he is still trying to understand how these new tools impact the car's behavior. This direct and unfiltered statement opens a window into the more human dimension of this change. We are witnessing one of the most successful drivers in the history of Formula One acknowledging that it is not easy to start from scratch, even with all his experience and talent. These words should not be taken as a sign of weakness, but rather as a validation of the magnitude of the challenge involved in changing teams after a full decade at Mercedes. It's not just a different car, but a different philosophy, an organizational culture that operates with new codes, and an environment that demands immediate results. Ferrari has not signed Hamilton for a medium-term process. They have brought him in to win and win now. And every week without a podium, without solid results, is another layer of pressure on the Britain's shoulders. In this context, the Japanese Grand Prix becomes a turning point. Suzuka is a technical, fluid-paced circuit where precision and car stability are key. It's a track that doesn't forgive mistakes, but also rewards drivers who can find that fine balance between aggression and control. It is, in many ways, the ideal setting to measure how far Hamilton and Ferrari have made progress in their integration. Furthermore, Japan comes at a time when the narrative surrounding Ferrari is more charged than ever. We're coming off a double disqualification in China, with Hamilton penalized for excessive floorboard wear and Leclerc for being underweight. Two basic errors, unforgivable for a team with title aspirations. And although the team has officially accepted the blame, the truth is that internally these situations generate tension, especially when combined with structural changes like those made to adapt the car to Hamilton. On the technical side, everything points to Ferrari introducing new updates at Suzuka to counter not only its own setup flaws, but also to regain ground on McLaren and Mercedes, who have shown a steeper upward trend in recent weeks. It will be crucial to see if these improvements adapt well to the circuit's characteristics and, more importantly, if Hamilton's car begins to behave more predictably and competitively under real-world race conditions. But beyond the technical aspects, Japan will also mark an emotional test. This is the moment where Ferrari needs to demonstrate that it can quickly recover from a glaring error. This is where Hamilton must send a clear message that he remains a dominant force, even in new territory. And this is where, inevitably, it will begin to define whether this partnership between Ferrari and Hamilton has the potential to become a winning chapter or if, on the contrary, the friction, errors and pressure begin to outweigh the progress. Because in Formula One you're not just racing against the clock, you're also racing against the narrative. And right now both Hamilton and Ferrari have a lot to prove. Suzuka could be the circuit that restores credibility to the project, or the one that confirms that this start to the season has been more problematic than many want to admit. The cameras will be on, the microphones alert, and every gesture, every word and every result will count. Because when everything is at stake, Japan isn't just another race. It's the stage for a truth that can no longer be postponed. Today we've analyzed in detail how Ferrari is rethinking its technical, strategic and even philosophical approach to maximize the performance of Lewis Hamilton, a driver who arrives not only with 7 world titles, but with a technical identity fully formed by more than a decade at Mercedes. We've seen how the simple element of the steering wheel has ceased to be a common tool among drivers and has transformed into a customized device, meticulously designed to replicate the control environment Hamilton is accustomed to. We're talking about an adaptation that ranges from the reorganization of selectors to the implementation of new data visualization software exclusively for him. It's not a superficial customization, it's a functional redesign that directly touches Ferrari's operational foundations. But this move doesn't come without a price. It has concrete benefits, such as speeding up Hamilton's adaptation and allowing him to compete at the highest level from the outset. At the same time, it creates potential friction within the team structure. A technical split within the same garage, duplication of development efforts, and the possibility that internal comparisons with Leclerc could take on an uncomfortable dimension if their technical paths continue to diverge. Ferrari is betting heavily on one side of the pit, and that choice will have consequences whether it works or not. On the other hand, Hamilton's own statements have made it clear that the path is still complex. Despite the adaptations, the Briton has been honest in admitting that he doesn't feel entirely natural with the car. This shows that no matter how hard they try to replicate previous environments, the jump from one team to another will always involve a learning curve, even for someone with his track record. And now, all eyes turn to the Japanese Grand Prix, where it will be clear whether these modifications have a real impact on the track or simply represent a premature effort on Ferrari's part. What's at stake here is not just Hamilton's performance, but Ferrari's own operating model. Can such a traditional team adopt a more flexible, driver-centric structure without losing its competitive identity? Can it turn this transition into a strength before media and sporting pressure turns it into a weakness? These are questions that will begin to be answered, not in interviews or press releases, but in every lap, every stint, in every strategic decision made from the pit wall to the cockpit. If you found this analysis useful and want more content like this, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next videos, where we will continue to thoroughly investigate every key movement within the paddock. Because what's happening right now at Ferrari is just the beginning of a much bigger story. And in our next video we'll delve into a topic that's already generating buzz in the halls of Maranello. Is Leclerc starting to feel his status within the team is eroding? Don't miss it.